What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, looking sharp today from his hotel room in Indiana. How's it going, Legs?
Yeah, I just, when I'm sitting around the hotel room, I just sometimes like to just dress up and hang out in the room. I got a TV gig right after we get done, so I'll be busting over to the arena to do NBA Today, so that's why I got the tie on today. Wow, man, that was impressive to say the least last night. The environment was incredible. Kind of used to it in Oklahoma City. This is my first time I've been at a game in Indiana since they were back in the conference finals days with Paul George and those guys and Roy Hibbert, right, playing against LeBron. So
right.
I haven't seen the environment. I've heard a lot about it. I know Oklahoma City, I think, kind of like the barometer right now, and they matched it last night, man. That place was absolutely electric. Didn't start off great. Everybody was kind of concerned when it was 13-6 early OKC, and that first time out comes, and you're like, man, they still haven't solved this defense. They haven't cracked the code. I guess maybe this is going to be a 5-gamer, and then everything just flipped on its head, and TJ McConnell had a lot to do with that, but just in general, their offense got loose finally, and they're in the series now. Their offense is in the series.
I love it, man. You're exactly right. I want to dive all into all those notes. I have to get this out of the way, though, because people are already commenting on it. I got a nice shiner, Legs. You see this?
Yeah, man. I should have probably mentioned that first. Yeah, that's legit, man. Yeah, that's as good as any a black guy I ever had playing in the league. I'm telling you right now.
Really?
So yeah. Oh yeah. You want to walk us through that? What happened?
Well, it happened in basketball. So I guess, unlike you, Legs, I go down and I get in, have to get my hands dirty. I'm not one of these guys that just float around the perimeter. I'm not boxing out. Oh, I'm just going to stand out here. I'm a guy that does the dirty work. And I caught a nice little elbow from in my old man league, my 40-year-old man league. So I'm going to have this. And by the way, this is like when I always wonder this, when guys are doing TV, pickup, things happen. I wonder, like, if I had to do TV today, you're all dressed all nice, but if I had to do TV today, this might actually be a problem.
Oh, no, that would be a problem. I mean, they can solve certain things, but there's certain things that are just beyond that. So let me ask you a question. Does this now lead to, like, is this a beef going forward with you and this unknown assailant?
You know what's sad is I don't even know who got me. It was like a scrum, like go up for a rebound, I get hit, and then I had blood all over my eye, so I couldn't even open my eye. So I don't even know who it was.
Adam, now I'm officially suspicious that this even happened on a basketball court. That was a very shady response. I don't even know who hit me. Look, my nose is crooked. I know that Oakley got me. Charles Oakley got me. I mean, I know this. I know who it was. That kind of makes me a little bit suspicious of what you were doing last night, where you were hanging out, and what went down.
This is my story. I'm sticking to it.
I actually had one of our viewers sent in a photo of it, so I do have proof of it.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
Let me pull it up here for you.
I didn't realize there was a camera. Oh,
there you go.
Tyson's punch out. Oh, no. That does kind of look like me, though. You know what? It's a very flattering image.
Yes, not bad. Not bad.
All right, let's dive into this game, man. You're right that to start this one, I even texted a buddy. I mean, this shows you what kind of observer I am. Because they're up 11 almost immediately. OKC's up 11. And I kind of go, oh, my God, they're already down 10. Is this going to be a blowout? Because it felt like that. But it was only in that moment that it felt that way. Indiana responds, as they always do, bounce back. And it was the bench. I mean, we talked about this the other day. Indiana is going to have to get contributions from other guys. not just from Haliburton and Siakam, who needed to step up from their game 2 performance, but other guys. And what do they get? 49 bench points, including 27 from your guy, Benedict Mathurin, 9 of 12 shooting, and he drew a bunch of fouls. To me, that's the top story. This was a team win, and they got contributions from several guys, not just one or two, several guys.
Yeah, I think one of the big stories for me leaving Oklahoma City, changing venues, was looking at the first 2 games, and I said, well, nobody on their team has really had a game that was like kind of at their ceiling or close to it or looked like their ceiling. And you looked at Oklahoma City, you're like, okay, Shai's had 2 of those, and they had those incredible games from Wiggins and Caruso. So 2 role players lit it up. Also had like basically their ceiling as an offensive player. Indiana wasn't close to that with anybody. And now you look at this game, you go, okay, Haliburton, very good. You know, not necessarily ceiling. We've seen that, but still very good. All-star caliber performance last night. Siakam, very good. Neither guy was like sensational. They were both very good. And then you had Mathurin, who was the storyline of the game. How comfortable he looked, how in rhythm he was, how strong he looked. You know, it's weird how he's flipped this postseason around for himself, because he had that 5-game stretch where he scored a total of 15 points in a 5-game playoff stretch, 3 points per game over a period of like 10, 12 days. And he averaged 17 points a game this season. So I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on with Mathurin, but we might not see him the rest of this season, this postseason, as himself. And he turned it around at the end of the Knicks series. He had a couple big games, getting to the line mostly. Then last night, it was like this mid-range shooting display in addition to his ability to finish. So he had a great game. And then, of course, they got, I think, kind of like one of those ceiling type games out of TJ McConnell, who was everywhere.
Sure.
And what juice he gave that building, man. I can't even describe the juice that he injected into the game when he got onto the court. It didn't start off great. He had a couple of turnovers, at least one, I remember. And he missed a couple of shots at the rim, and it was like, it wasn't a great start for TJ. And then in a matter of 3 to 4 minutes, the guy flipped the game on its head with his energy and got that place, everybody up on their feet. And he really did it single-handedly during that one sequence.
Yeah. I want to get to him in just a second, but I want to stick on Mathurin, because you're right, McConnell, it was both of them. Even Obi Toppin, it was a 3-man bench, because I know they played Thomas Bryant and they played Ben Shepherd, but really it was the 3 guys that really contributed off the bench. But with Benedict Mathurin in particular, one of the things that's interesting, he obviously was one of their top prospects a handful of years back, really good individual player, quick, can shoot it. And this team moved into this high IQ ball movement. You know, nobody holds the ball for long, but he's kind of the counterpuncher to what they do. And I think he fits in. Like, he sacrifices a lot. You can tell he's trying. But last night, it was his ability to get downhill, draw fouls. He gets 8 free throws. But on top of that, just being able to convert shots. It's almost like at a team like Indiana's best, it's great when they have a curveball or a counterpunch to throw. And Mathurin, to me, represents that. And last night in particular, it was like, okay, we slowed down all what they're doing over here, but now Mathurin is a guy that we have to kind of guard a little bit differently.
Yeah, totally. One of the things I loved about his game last night, he wasn't going to settle or take 3-point shots. He took 3 of them, made 2. But the numbers in the game, 49 total threes attempted. Incredible. 22 3-points attempted for Oklahoma City. 22.
Yep.
That's a quarter for the Celtics. I mean, so the game was played differently. And I thought Indiana in particular was really playing to their strength. And look, they definitely played faster up the floor. They got into stuff earlier in the clock. I saw the number from the previous game. The average possession was taking them 19 plus seconds of the shot clock, their average possession. And that's just, we call those reds. The bench starts shouting red when you get down to 5 on the shot clock, or some teams might call it something different. Like the teams I played on typically was like red, let everybody know the shot clock's winding down. They were in that zone the entire game. It's game 2. They weren't in it really hardly at all in last night's game. So part of it was them more determined. I thought they were throwing the ball ahead better to get Oklahoma City to sort of retreat. It led to good secondary stuff. But I also thought OKC didn't seem like they were picking them up as far up the floor for the most part. And it allowed them, to have that freedom of movement we keep talking about with Haliburton. It was important to them. So I thought the pace was fantastic. They weren't settling for early threes. They weren't taking threes a lot of times, even on the first half decent one. They made another pass, and then somebody got into a gap and shot a mid-range, and they got all the way to the rim. I thought they were just really smart, very poised, understanding how big this game was because they stole a game. Okay. And they won home court advantage in that game one by winning that last 9 minutes of the game. It's really the only stretch they've outplayed them in the series to this point. If you give that right back last night, this could have been a 5-gamer if they lose that last night. Instead, they come out, they have by far their best game of the series. And it was interesting to watch Oklahoma City struggle to this extent to guard them. 40 points in the second quarter. A 40-point quarter against a defense that good. Really, really incredible.
Well, part of the way you get 40 points in the second quarter, you get quick buckets. And TJ McConnell had some quick buckets in this one, stealing the inbound. We had this great stat from AOP, who's doing some cool social media stats for us. You should follow us on Twitter /X because there's some really cool stats. He has 112 times in his career he has stolen the inbound pass. He did it twice in this game in big moments for wide open layups. And that's how you get to 40 points because that possession was 3 seconds long. You know, you steal the inbound, you get a layup. And that sequence he had in the second quarter, it was like a 2-minute sequence or 3-minute sequence where he was just making big time defensive plays, passes, getting into the teeth of the defense. Nope. Every team has one guy that wakes a crowd up or really gets a crowd on their feet. TJ McConnell is that guy for Indiana just because the nature of the type of plays he made. In that sequence, you couldn't have asked for something better at a crucial moment than what he gave you in that moment. You were in the building. What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I looked up after his 4-minute burst, and it was such a strange thing because his stat line read 4 minutes, 0 for 1 from the field, 4 assists, 2 steals, and yet he completely turned that game on its head. I don't know. I still, to this day, I'll never understand what Alex Caruso was thinking on that one inbounds pass. He threw it right to him. I mean, he was standing right in front of him, and he just sort of threw this very careless pass. I guess he wasn't expecting TJ McConnell to jump up and catch that when he's like 5 feet away from him. But it was amazing. Look, and I just continue to be astounded at what this guy's able to do with certain physical limitations that he has, his size or whatever. The guy impacts the game every time. Every night he has some sort of major impact on the game. None bigger than last night. With what was at stake, with the start they had to the game, the way that he came in and closed out the first quarter leading into the second, they gave him extended run of the second. They just left him out there longer, left Haliburton on the bench longer because of how good it was going with TJ McConnell. There's nothing more you can really say. Everybody watched it, and it was obvious that was sort of a pivotal point in the series, really, that time he was on the court, and the way that they didn't control the game at that point. They only have 4 at halftime. And then OKC scores the first 8 of the second half. And I'm going, wow, they came out of the locker room, 4 straight buckets. Indiana's not getting anything done. I'm thinking, Indiana's still kind of in trouble. So it wasn't like he won the game. But at that time, to give that kind of electricity to the building was waiting for something like that. I can't overstate the importance of what he did in that moment to get the crowd into it. And then they stayed in it the rest of the night because then it was pretty much back and forth. Like you didn't know who was going to win that game until Indiana hit them with that final killer burst.
Yeah, you see this more in football than in basketball, where it's like one guy can make a play that completely changes the game. And, special teams guys, or sometimes guys that aren't on every single down, you'll say, go out there and just do something to create a spark, something that turns the tide. I feel like TJ McConnell approaches every second he's on the court that way, that he's one play away from turning the momentum in a game, or in this case, maybe even a series. And that sequence was absolutely it. And he had another one in the second half, by the way, just as good. So he was phenomenal. And then the last guy, Obi Toppin, Obi Toppin had a big game one. He was a difference maker in there and helped them get the win. Him closing this game, or closing a majority of the fourth quarter of this game, to me, when we talk about OKC goes with 2 bigs, and in this series, they're not going to it as much. The Pacers almost have a weird size advantage because of your ability to play Siakam and Toppin, both who are very athletic, very long. And so if both teams are going to go small, OKC's small is smaller than Indiana's. And in particular, when they get that 45 cut, which is what Obi Toppin is really great at, from the wing when somebody gets dribble penetration he cuts at the 45-degree angle towards the basket. He had that monster putback in the fourth quarter off of that cut and then followed it up with a block. To me, Obi Toppin is an interesting X factor in this series because he is a big small. He is a big guy when they can play in your small lineups, and his athleticism stands out.
Yeah, agreed. I like the point about their small lineup being longer, bigger than OKC's with Siakam and Toppin, like two guys that have a lot of versatility with their size and length. And he didn't have a monster game offensively, but you're right. I think 26 minutes, the impact was significant. Being on the floor most of the fourth quarter was significant for them in what they could do defensively. Miles Turner had a couple really big defensive plays in the fourth quarter as well. Did a great job on Chet, who had a great start to the game. And overall his numbers look pretty good, but I thought he really struggled in the fourth quarter with all of the contact. The game got more and more physical in the fourth quarter. There was a lot of contact around the paint, around the rim, and I thought Chet Holmgren had a difficult time with the physicality of Miles Turner when he was trying to take him off to dribble. It affected him dramatically. So between Turner, Toppin, Siakam, I thought the length was appropriate. The other thing all of those guys did for the first time in the series, their body positioning at the initial point of the screen for Shai was so much better. And it's obvious that they looked at it. It's what I talked to you about. Their footwork of the guy guarding Shai initially was so bad, the way they were squaring him up and letting him choose either direction to go. The secondary defender was always in the wrong place. So he wasn't contained at all in Oklahoma City. They contained him last night. I mean, really well. A couple times he got loose, got down the lane, split or went around the corner of both guys, but that was happening all the time in the first two games. Barely happened last night. As a result, Shai got gassed. He looked tired last night. He was having to work so much harder to escape the initial traffic because the positioning of the guys that were guarding the screener were so much better at making sure he was corralled, at least temporarily, so that their defense could get ready to rotate on the backside. They weren't doing that in OKC. He owned them. He was controlling everything about that end of the floor with their inability to keep him in one place. They did a better job of it last night. And all of these, I'm going to go over some metrics in a second after I get your thoughts on what I just said. There's some metrics last night that were pretty incredible that our research team at ESPN gave me as I was leaving the building on just to what extent their defense on Shai was better last night. It's not just better. It was like one of the best he's ever faced in his career, what they did to him last night.
Well, I thought this is what I think about it. So we talked about you need contributions. After the last game, we talked about you need contributions from your bench. You get that. And the other big talking point was what you just said. Indiana was guarding them flat. Shai was able to kind of pick which direction you go. Defense is out of position. Last night, that was not the case. They did a much better job of forcing the action. Shai, you're going to play this way, and we're going to be prepared for you. And I have some stats for you. I'm very curious which ones you got from your research team, but let me give you these ones. When SGA was the bring-up ball handler in this game, Indiana picked him up on an average of 65.5 feet from the basket. That's the highest pick-and-roll pickup point for SGA has faced this entire year. So we talked about overextending him in the half court, and that gives him an opportunity. But I thought that Indiana did a good job of wearing him down by saying, you're going to have to struggle to bring the ball up. As a result, he brought the ball up only 23 possessions, which is very below his average. And on those possessions, it took 7 seconds to cross half court. So they made, before everything else we get to, they just made Shai work hard to bring the ball up or got the ball out of his hands, which allowed them to dictate the half court a lot more. And that stat to me is kind of wild. The furthest pickup point he's faced at any point this entire season.
That's one of the numbers. There were several. That's one of them that's going to go into what I'm about to say. There's a formula that they use, and it's pretty interesting how they plug all this stuff in to determine these kind of things. So it basically ends up with the extent to which a player is pressured in a game. What you just said was part of it. The pickup point. He's never faced that. The other thing, the distance from the nearest defender on the catch in the front court, the shortest amount of space between him and a defender that he has faced, less than 6 feet on his initial catch over half court. The amount of space between him and the defender on the release of the ball, hand-on-hand, contest, the narrowest gap he's seen. When you added it all up and put it into this formula, that game last night represented the the best pressure ever applied to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in his career, not just this season, not just this postseason, in his entire career. What you watched last night was arguably one of the best defensive performances that he has seen against him. Obviously, he's had worse nights. He's had nights where, he just struggled to shoot. But in terms of the defense impacting his performance because of taking away space and making him play in more traffic and pressuring more up the floor, all those things, you're looking last night as good as it's been in his career. That's how good the Pacers were on him last night.
And it had ripple effects in every single thing that happened in this game because, okay, first of all, 6 turnovers from Shai. That's a high mark. 17 overall for the Thunder. That's a really high mark. And then you go to the assists, only 4 assists. I know we talked about it's not just assists with Shai. He gets the ball out of his hands and the ball works around the horn. That was not happening. And then I think the biggest thing here, Legs, is Shai wore down in this game. I thought his defense, especially late, was poor. And I thought that he had the weirdest fourth quarter you've ever seen. 3 points in 10 minutes. He had traveling violations. He had weird pick up the ball in weird spots. And I think it was cumulative of Indiana made him work harder than ever for the first 3 quarters. And then when the game got tight in the clutch, he kind of, started making mental errors as well as physical ones. And I'll give you one that I think was really egregious. With 1 minute and 10 seconds to go, he gets to his spot. Against Siakam. It's a tough shot. Siakam has length, but he gets to a shot that, you're going to have to make tough shots in the fourth quarter. He gets one, misses it, and Siakam beats him down the court for a wide open layup. And the game was not over. Even though it was 110, the game was not over until that basket. And to me, Shai doesn't make those mistakes. That showed me that Indiana had worn him down in a way he was not used to.
Well, and I'll tell you the other thing, just like the eye test of him bending over so much. He was bending over, grabbing his shorts constantly. I mean, really the whole second half. I saw him do it repeatedly in the fourth quarter. And sometimes maybe the camera can catch it, or you can see it more when you're there and like looking at him. Maybe the camera goes off of him and you can't see the extent to which I thought he was like drawing in deep breaths. He was bent over. He's a thoroughbred. So you don't see him really look like that. He did last night, man. And I'm telling you, it was because of how hard he had to work against the initial traffic. He had to just veer much further, a greater distance to dribble the ball around the trap, or even getting hit coming off with all of their bigs, or even when there was a guard on guard screen. Like, those guys were so much better prepared to be early with their hedges. So he was feeling contact every time he came off a ball screen. He only was successfully split it 2 or 3 times in the entire game. He probably did it, 15 times in the 2 games in Oklahoma City would be my estimate. Where now you split that ball screen defense. You basically now have 2 guys behind you. It's a 4-on-3 situation, and he was eating that alive. He didn't get that. And Indiana just looked at, credit their coaching staff, credit film work, credit commitment to it. They tightened up. To me, what wasn't talked about enough, we kept talking about Indiana's offense. What's wrong with their offense? Haliburton's got to get going. Pace, tempo, like all this stuff. And I'm going, none of that's going to matter if they don't corral this guy. Because it's ridiculous how easy this looks for him right now. It was anything but last night, and it did have a cumulative physical effect on him. He was fatigued most of the fourth quarter and damn near gassed by the last 2 minutes of the game. It was very effective, and he addressed it, actually. He was honest about it. Yep. What he saw, what he faced, how he felt out there, what their defense did to him, he acknowledged it. And so now, of course, the way it always is in the playoffs, now let's see what their response is going to be to that.
It's so funny because we always talk about who's the aggressor in a game. And it's like, okay, so Indiana wins and they were the more aggressive team. It almost feels like the easiest thing you can say, but it's also true. And in this one, basketball is a sport where you're both acting and reacting. And I thought, and oftentimes the team that's more aggressive is going to force the other team to react. And I just thought that's what Indiana did. And in fact, Tyrese Haliburton talked about this after the game. He did an on-court interview on SportsCenter, and he talked about the flat screening, showing up flat. We need to be able to force them to a side, but also our pickup points just have to be more deliberate. It's not even about higher. It's that when they're running a pick and roll, we're not reacting to that pick and roll. We're before them. Oh, the pick and roll's coming. We're going to be early to this so that we're in position so we don't get split, so we can force them to go the directions we want. He brought this exact things up, and that's why, and it was so obvious. And when you do that, the Thunder played the entire game reacting to the Pacers' defense. That's an incredible accomplishment for a team that we didn't really talk about them as a defensive team for most of the year, but they have leveled up to be able to execute that against a really good Thunder offense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look, so the question now, I think for Mark Daigneault, and I think they've got to look at this. I disagreed with the decision to go small from the beginning. I said that. I didn't like the idea of it. Almost felt like the 68 win team's the one that's going to make this adjustment to the other team going in. That should be the other way around. Now, if you play those two guys bigs in the beginning of the series and whatever reason, you're having a hard time guarding them because there's two bigs and they're spreading you out and they got 5 guys out on the perimeter and it's a lot of dribble drive, read and react type stuff and they couldn't guard them. All right, then you make the adjustment. I just thought doing it ahead of time was kind of odd to me. And those two guys have only played, I think, 10 minutes together.
Right.
Okay?
It's not much.
They're a +7. And the field goal percentage of the Pacers is like under 30% when they're both on the floor. I know it's a very small sample size, but the sample is good. You know what I mean? Sometimes if you have a small sample size and it's really, really bad, you go, okay, that's just not enough. It's a small sample size, but it has been effective. I don't know if he goes to it from the start of the game. I don't know if they play more next game. I don't know if he's just not thinking that way at all. If he's thinking about other stuff that they got to clean up. I don't know. But I think Indiana coming out of that game and just looking at those guys after the game and walking around, milling around the court, and we interviewed a couple on our set, and then they were, we saw them leaving the arenas. I don't know, man. They looked really, really comfortable. And like, okay, we figured this out. This team, we've had a very difficult time operating against offensively. Not only these two, but in the regular season as well, particularly Haliburton. Looked much more like himself last night. They think that they are now saying, you know what? We got enough, man. We got enough to deal with this great defense. I'm curious to see what Daigneault's, what he's going to do. What adjustments will he make? First of all, for Shai, if they continue to play him that way, it's going to be a hard road with all of this commitment to him. He's never been blitzed that many times in a playoff game in his career as he was last night. So, okay, Now what? And Jalen Williams played pretty well last night. You can't blame him. He did his part. But I just think their defense didn't have the effect on Indiana that they are used to having. And let's see what they do to change that.
So I have a theory on this, Legs, and I kind of keep hammering this point in some degree, but Indiana is a very cerebral team. Their strength is in their ability to figure things out. And that's the muscle that they built up throughout the course of the season. How do we work together smartly to be able to solve whatever problems? And I almost wonder, and OKC, by the way, is this to a lesser degree, but one of the better teams at this. But I almost wonder when you talk about comfort, if you have that muscle, we go to the drawing board, we come up with a game plan and we execute it because that's what we've been focusing on all year, how to execute and think on the fly. That muscle is strong. You have a comfort level because what waxes and wanes then is your own energy level, which is more controllable. You go into a game, you say, hey, we have to have better energy today. You can do that. If it's the other way, and I think OKC is first and foremost a team that always brings great energy and intensity, and they are a smart team, but it's almost like you're less comfortable saying we have to be smarter. That's not something you can just do. That's a muscle. It's like, okay, well, how do we be smarter? What do we have to do? So I almost wonder if that's Indiana's thing is they just go into a series, whether they win or lose, they go, we know what we're supposed to do. Mentally, we know how to solve this problem. And it gives you a comfort level of we just know what is required of us.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think they lacked any of that last night. They certainly had the energy because you could tell that at the start of the game. Like that's a good indicator. They're ready. They're always ready. And that's the way they play. Yeah. They got throttled a little bit in that second quarter. I mean, they gave up 64 points in the first half. And they were kind of like, all right, they were having a very difficult time making Indiana work for everything. So I don't think the energy was there. One thing they've got that surprised me about this game, if you're Mark Daigneault and Aaron Wiggins plays the way he did in game 2, how does he get 10 minutes and that's short of a leash? He goes 0 for 2. And you got Cason Wallace out there now, 27 minutes a night in this series. He's played 80 minutes or something like that. He has 17 points in 80 minutes. And I know he's a really good on-ball defender, so that's his primary role. And each of their top perimeter defenders are different. Like Caruso's the guy that gets the strips and plays the passing lanes. Jalen Williams is the most versatile of the guys. He can guard anybody. Casey Wallace is the pressure up the ball guy, right? And then Dort is the fight over screen guy. So they all do something differently at a high level, and that's Casey Wallace's main thing. But I'm sitting there going, man, you got a guy like Wiggins that played that well, and you give him 10 minutes, he takes 2 shots, and that's all the burn he gets. That surprised me a little bit. And that's one area I'm going to look at the next game. Will Casey Wallace be out there for 27 minutes a night? Or are you going to go to Wiggins a little bit more? Or are you going to play the 2 bigs a little bit more? And that takes some of Casey Wallace's minutes away because he's not really a threat offensively to that extent. And in a game when it doesn't feel like he's impacting with his pressure on the ball, maybe that was a game that required a little bit more offense. Like if you're Mark Daigneault, 64-60 at half, you kind of get a feeling, and maybe this is going to be one of those higher scoring games. And that might mean we need more punch. And a guy like Wiggins could do that, and he didn't go there. So that's one other thing I think I'm going to look at for the next game. If it gets a pulse, say, hey, man, this is 46-42 at halftime. This is going to be a defensive game, the way it's being officiated, whatever it may be. Okay, maybe you go with the more defensive-minded lineup. And Wiggins isn't a bad defender, by the way. He's an adequate defender, but he's a really good offensive player. So I'm curious to see if there's a little bit of tinkering with the minutes that Daigneault is doling out.
Well, this is the flip side. It's always a double-edged sword. Every strength can also be a weakness. The double-edged sword of having so many guys that are interchangeable is then it can be difficult, who you go to and who you don't. And I wonder if that's the problem Daigneault has is he's got a lot of playable guys, but to your point, Wiggins, Wallace, they're pretty similar. And so you end up picking between one of them and maybe you make the wrong pick there. I have to imagine that's a difficulty of coaching a team like this.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things I've liked about their team is I've said in the past, they don't have to typically sacrifice one end of the floor for the other because a lot of their guys can do both. Like even a guy like Isaiah Joe, who made a couple threes when he got in the game last night, like the guy's a really good on-the-ball defender. He's not just your typical, 3-and-D guy or a three-point shooter that can't guard and you're trying to protect him. Casey Wallace is a decent offensive player, but he's not really doing anything to affect the game offensively in this series. So I look at a guy like Wiggins and you go, man, against a team like this, now look, some nights, like I said, you might have them under control pretty well. And you're like, okay, I'm really happy with our defense right now. This is the key. But if you start to see the pace is a little different tonight, this feels more like an Indiana game, then you might need more offense on the floor at the end of the day, particularly with all of the attention they were giving Shai that far out on the that far out of the court. That ball gets swung. They only took 22 threes in the game. Incredibly low number. So if Wiggins is out there, hey, man, maybe some of those blitzes that you extended on Shai 40 feet out, maybe those are ones that gets kicked out and it gets swung to a much higher caliber shooter in Wiggins who could have hurt them. And maybe now there's an adjustment by Carlisle. Okay, we're getting burned with some of these threes. Now we got to back off, and then Shai gets loose. I think that's part of the cat and mouse of who you want on the floor, depending how Indiana is going on a given night. I thought last night required a little bit more Wiggins, and he just didn't want to go there. He didn't give very much run.
All right, we're going to take our first break. On the other side, I want to ask, though, if Indiana now has control of the series, because you called this a must-win for Indiana, not necessarily for Oklahoma City, but Indiana does look like they are not afraid of this team and they're comfortable. So the Pacers have the upper hand now. We'll talk about that on the other side. First, we got a new partner. Let me ask you guys, have you ever tried to make a parlay and you hit every single leg except for one? We all have been there. I know super producer James was there last night, missed his parlay by just one take. Well, maybe you wanted to have a site that helps you by using historical data, matchup grades, leg correlation tools, and playoff performance insights. The Hall of Fame app is for you. It's got a 4.9 rating in the App Store and over 6,000 five-star reviews. It's safe to say the Hall of Fame app has already helped a lot of people win smarter. If you're betting on sports and not using the Hall of Fame app, that's just leaving money on the table. They have all of these great stats and insights and a lot of great tools. And they have these cool features where once you've built your parlay on the app, you can send it straight to your sportsbook of choice with one click. No manual entry, no wasted time. The Hall of Fame app syncs automatically with most major sportsbooks like FanDuel in particular. Hall of Fame isn't just about parlays. It's built for player props, game lines, totals, and more, giving you the tools to break down trends, spot value, and make smarter bets across every major market. For limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but they also get 50% off their first month when they use the code ALLNBA at checkout. Just download the Hall of Fame app on iOS or Android, or visit HOF.com and enter the code ALLNBA, and you're all set. Also want to tell you about FanDuel, the best place to find all your favorite player props. And now you can make the smarter play with new performance trends. And once the game starts, that's when things get interesting. You can combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. If you don't already have FanDuel, it's not too late to get in on the action. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. All right, back here on segment 2. If you're new to the show, make sure you're subscribed. Me and Tim Legler, 4 times a week, breaking down all the action and having a lot of fun breaking down these finals games, man, because so many interesting things happen. And now we're going to turn to where the series is at. There are a couple more things from this game that I want to get to, but I'm going to start by saying this. Shai, after the game, I thought, you mentioned that he, shared some insight. I actually thought he seemed very confused after the game. And what I mean by that is he was asked a handful of questions like, what happened here? What did this? And he said, you know what? I don't have a bird's eye view of it. I don't know. I'm going to have to watch the tape, this or that. And that tells me, and first of all, some of this is natural. It's the finals. It's the highest level of basketball. But some of this also tells me that he's walking out of this game saying, I don't know what happened. We're going to have to collectively work as a team to figure out, because that team over there is making adjustments that are giving us problems.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Actually, a couple of the questions, he kind of took a long pause and sighed and was thinking about what he wanted to say. I think that points directly to what you're alluding to. They're going to go take a look at it. He's such a great player that I think they're going to have something they're going to do a little bit differently to conserve his energy a little bit more, not have to work that hard if that's how they want to play them. I'm not going to sit here and go now because Indiana put up 116 last night and, for the most part, looked closer to themselves, that, okay, they got it all figured out. This is how it's going to go now. And they're going to win game 4, go up 3-1. And I know what everybody's thinking now. Okay, so then they lose game 5 on the road, come back, and it's Pacers in 6. And maybe that happens. But I'm certainly not willing to go there now. I mean, OKC has shown me over the course of an entire season what they are. And I think they're going to have some different things they're going to do offensively to help Shai, in particular, not have to work as hard as he just had to work in that game. I think that's probably the number one thing they're going to look at. And then also, how exactly did the Pacers get up the floor so easily so early in the clock in game 3 as opposed to the first 2? Let's go take a look and compare those 2 tapes and get back to kind of making them feel uncomfortable the way that they did in Oklahoma City. So I think this was a must-win game for Indiana, in my opinion. Even if you got the split, I felt like last night was more important because you didn't immediately give momentum back to Oklahoma City, right? So now you got home, hold home court. Let them know this is going to be a formidable place for you to win a game in this series. We're setting the tone right now. This is what it's going to look like on this court. That's why I thought it was so important to them. OKC now, they've got to win a road game, right, to get home court back. Make this a best of 3 with 2 of those at home. Their opportunity to be tomorrow night, they're a great team. They've been a great team all year. I think they're going to be up for the task tomorrow night.
Well, that's why it's so interesting, because if OKC wins game 4, you say 3 games at home. I like OKC's chances. Heavy favorite. I wouldn't just say favorites. Heavy favorites to me in that situation. And part of this, Legs, is they are not the same team on the road as they are at home. I mean, Lou Dort last night was 4 or 5 from the 3-point line, so he made his shots, but the rest of that team is not nearly as comfortable on the road. And at home, they look supremely comfortable with that crowd behind them, and they just win and win big. So, I think that is a big part of it. But the other part of it is Indiana, part of why game 3 was so important. Thunder are a young team. This is a big stage. They're so close to winning a championship, and the pressure gets higher because of how close you are. And you said Indiana looked comfortable last night. I agree. I actually thought the Thunder looked very uncomfortable in key moments. We haven't even talked about Chet Holmgren. I mean, we talked about Shai in the rough fourth quarter he had. Chet Holmgren had a sequence against Miles Turner. He was 12 points in the first quarter, I think 15 or something like that at half, only scored 5 points the rest of the game. And he had a couple of really tough sequences against Miles Turner, who played great defense. And to me, that's what I'm talking about. The Thunder got a little tight late in this game, ended up pressing in ways that just did not work out. And it was almost like, I wonder if game 4 is going to be the most pressure they have faced at any point in this entire playoffs, and really at any point in their entire careers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, yes, to answer your question, they are going to be feeling that. Just look at historically the odds of coming back from 3-1 in the NBA Finals, man. It doesn't really happen very often. I know the Cavs did it to the Warriors. I don't know, was that the first time that happened? Down 3-1, come all the way back and win the finals. So, I mean, they know what they're going to be facing if they don't win this game tomorrow night. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and Pacers might win. The Pacers might win this series. They're good enough to do it. Their team is playing well enough right now. They're hot enough overall. The totality of what they've done in the postseason, they're capable of doing it. I just think, last night, look, it's one game. Oklahoma City, they were throttled last night in certain aspects of that game. Physically, I thought Indiana took it to them. Oklahoma City's not used to having that done to them. They haven't really done what they did to teams all year. They have not turned a team over to the extent where it completely rattles you offensively because of how they're converting those. That hasn't happened now through 3 games. The turnovers have not been a major factor. Now, the first half of game 1 was absurd. They had 19 or 20 turnovers to Indiana. It led to 9 points. That's what I mean. The combination of the two has not been a factor in this. Is one of those games coming where Oklahoma City gets 16 turnovers that leads to 24 points, and it's very difficult to recover from that. Let's see, man. I know Indiana did what they had to, man. They established this is going to be tough for you here in this building in this series, and we have home court now. You have to win a game in Indiana to win this series. If you're the Thunder, one down. They didn't get it done. They're going to have a couple more opportunities.
Yeah. And we barely gave Miles Turner a shout out, but I have to give him a shout out for that second half defense because he was getting cooked early on. He's struggling with some containment out on the perimeter, but in the second half, man, some of those plays, including the sequence I'm talking about, closes out on Chet, 7'1", gets a block at the 3-point line, which I don't know how many times Chet Holmgren has ever been blocked on a 3-pointer in his life. I would bet you it's less than a dozen times. He gets blocked, recovers the ball, and now he's going to drive on Turner, who moved his feet incredibly well, and then gets the turnover, forces the turnover on him. He just stepped up in some really big moments defensively on this one that I thought also kind of took the teeth off of OKC.
Yeah, it's a good point. I said yesterday when I was doing all the pregame hits and the TV hits I was doing, we were talking about the game, just analyzing whatever, and X Factor type people. I thought he would be an X Factor, but not for the reason you're saying. I thought he's due for one of these games where he makes 4 or 5 threes. He's so capable. He's now, counting last night, is a 10-game stretch without making more than 2. And in fact, 8 of those games, he's only made 1. 2 games, he's made 2. That's a 10-game stretch without making more than 2. And 8 of those, he only made 1, 3. And the shot is there for him because Oklahoma City reacts so well to penetration that kick out is there. So I thought he'd be an X factor last night because I thought he might make 4 threes in the game, and we'd be talking about that. We were talking about it for a different reason. His physicality and defense overall in the game was a major factor. And Chet had the great start. I don't think a lot of that was on Miles Turner. When Miles Turner locked into him one-on-one, Chet looked like really off balance, and he was falling. He was having a very difficult time with Miles Turner's just size and strength off the dribble, doing anything. So he was a factor for sure, and it was mostly in the defense and like the physicality of the game, not his shot making, which is where I thought he would pay dividends.
Yeah, it was huge, man. And, I'm thinking about this now as you go to game 4. Both of these teams are actually pretty young. With the exception of Pascal Siakam and maybe Alex Caruso as well, I think game 4 is the biggest game of every other player's life on the court, which is rare. You don't always get that in a series or even in a finals, where if you look at it, Tyrese Haliburton, biggest game of his life, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, J-Dub, all of these guys, this is the biggest game in their life. And I think that's part of what and it's a Friday night. That's part of what makes game 4. The table could not be set more perfectly for this series than for what we're going to see in game 4.
Yeah. I mean, I thought this game, there was palpable tension in the air from the very beginning of the game. What was at stake last night? Number one, Indiana needed badly to establish that they can operate their offense against this team. And when they started out the way they did, like you said, we were kind of looking at each other like, oh man, here we go. You're down 9. It was a 19-10, I think, when they finally started to make a run. So they did that last night. They established, okay, man, we can do our thing against this team. So in some ways you got to like shake that, and they did it. It was big, and you could feel it in the air, the importance of it. OKC wins it, obviously. I mean, you now have Indiana in a hole they might not recover from, man. Instead, it's the other way now. Now, here we go. Okay, 68 wins. Clearly the best team in the NBA all year. You've got yourself into a little bit of a pickle here. And what's your reaction to that going to be? And typically what they have done in these spots, and they haven't faced too many, but they typically react with their defense. That is their reaction. Not as much, we got to really worry about getting unlocked offensively. They think to themselves, no, what did we score? What did they score in the game last night? 107 or something?
Yeah.
All right. Well then that's fine. We'll just make sure they get 106 or less Friday. Like that's kind of their mentality, not like, we got to figure out a way to get more offensive punch. It's more about their defense is typically what they turn to. Like that's their safe place. Nobody can do what we do defensively. Let's get back to that. Let's find out what we did so well in Oklahoma City we were not able to accomplish last night. And let's get back to some of that, and we're going to be fine. That's the message. There's no panic in this team. They understand the moment. No. They also just feel like they're the best team in the NBA, and they're going to react accordingly.
Do you think game 4 is low scoring relative to the rest of the series, or high scoring, or kind of the same as it's been? I feel like this might be the tight game.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think in that 110, 107 range. And I'm not even predicting who's going to win, but I think it's going to be that kind of game. I don't think you're going to get games in like the high 90s or like 100. And I don't think you're going to see any team like getting up there in that 120 range. The game's decided like 120, 117. I think it's going to be just in that low 100s, like just over 100. I do have a feeling it's going to get like, look, a lot of it's going to have to do with how physical do they let Oklahoma City be with their hands and what they're allowed to get away with off the ball. I thought they started off calling the game a little bit tighter last night. The offensive foul on Shai right away. Then they called Dort like right after that for holding on to Haliburton off the ball. He's been doing it the whole series. They finally called one, and it was like, okay, that's interesting. So the officiating will play a factor in what they're going to let Oklahoma City do, because I know they're going to turn up the heat defensively. That's what they always do when they've got their back in the corner a little bit.
And by the way, Shai had a couple late in the game trying to draw contact off Nembhard and didn't get the call. And, so you're right. A lot of this is just who's calling the game and what are they allowing? What are they not allowing in a game? And players have to kind of figure that out early and adjust. But it should be a great one. On tomorrow's show, we're going to have Mark Stein on because there's a lot of buzz going around with free agency, which is only like 2 weeks away, to maybe 3 weeks away. But the deals are starting to be laid out now, and Mark Stein is going to have some interesting stuff for us tomorrow. So tomorrow's show will bounce around the league a little bit more, as well as preview, obviously, the great game 4. So that should be a great one. Legs, you got any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, man. It's just the series for me. Like I feel like officially started last night, and now, I think we could be in this for 7 games, man. And I'm glad, because I don't know. A lot of people were acting like they weren't going to be too interested in this series. It got super interesting last night, I think, to everybody.
I think the series rules. I love it because these two teams, I mean, what the Thunder do defensively is really incredible. And the only way to beat it is with incredible connection and ball movement, which the Pacers are one of very few teams, maybe the only team capable of doing that. So it makes for great basketball. I'm with you. I think game 4 comes down to the wire, and I can't wait to watch it. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us in the chat today. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow's show should be great as well as we round out the week. Hit the like button on the way out.
like the mayor.